I never thought a shipping container sitting on my property could turn into a military investigation. But apparently, my HOA Karen had other plans. And by the time she realized what she had taken, the people looking for it were no longer HOA board members. They were military personnel. It started on a quiet Tuesday morning. I owned a large rural property outside a small town. Nothing fancy, just open land, a workshop, a few outbuildings, and one large steel shipping container sitting near the edge of my property. The container had been there for months. It was locked, clearly marked, and completely inside my property line. I used it for equipment storage. Nobody had ever complained about it until the new HOA president moved into the neighborhood. Her name was Karen, and from the first week she arrived, she acted like the entire county belonged to her. She complained about fences. She complained about trucks. She complained about people parking on their own property. Then one afternoon, she stopped beside my driveway and pointed toward the shipping container. She said, "That thing violates the community appearance standards." I laughed. I told her, "It isn't in the community. It's on my private property." She didn't like that answer. She pulled out her phone and started taking pictures. Then she said something I should have taken more seriously. "You'll be removing it soon." I told her she had absolutely no authority over it. She smiled and drove away. 3 days later, I came home from town and immediately noticed something was wrong. The container was gone. At first, I honestly thought I had taken a wrong road. I stopped my truck, looked again. The concrete blocks were still there. The tire marks were fresh. But the container? Gone. I called the sheriff's office. Then I checked my security cameras. And that's when I saw it. A large tow truck had entered my property. And behind it was a second vehicle. The person standing nearby was Karen. She wasn't hiding. She was actually pointing toward the container while the workers loaded it. I couldn't believe what I was watching. I called Karen. She answered like nothing unusual had happened. I asked her where my container was. She calmly replied, "It's being removed because it violates HOA regulations." I told her she had no legal right to enter my property or remove anything. Her response? "You'll get it back when you comply." That sentence became very important later, because Karen had made one enormous mistake. She didn't know what was inside that container, and neither did I fully understand how important its contents were. I immediately contacted the sheriff and showed them the footage. An officer came out, reviewed everything, and told me they would investigate the theft. But before the investigation could really get started, another vehicle pulled into my driveway. It wasn't a police cruiser. It was a government vehicle. 2 men stepped out. They showed identification. Then one of them asked me a question that completely changed the situation. "Are you the owner of a shipping container that was recently removed from this property?" I said yes. He looked at his colleague, then asked, "Do you know what's inside it?" I told him I owned a container, but I didn't know exactly why they were asking. He explained that the container contained equipment temporarily stored there under a private logistics arrangement. Some of the gear inside was connected to a military training operation. Nothing dangerous, nothing classified, but extremely important equipment that was supposed to be transported to another location. And now it was missing. My stomach dropped. I immediately showed them the security footage. They watched Karen standing beside the truck. They watched the container being removed. They watched the truck leave. One of the officials simply said, "So that's where it went." The sheriff contacted the towing company, and within an hour, investigators learned exactly where Karen had ordered the container taken. She had moved it to an HOA-controlled storage area several miles away. Karen apparently believed she could hold it until I paid a collection of HOA fees and agreed to remove it permanently. But now there was a much bigger problem. The equipment inside wasn't hers. It wasn't HOA property, and it wasn't even supposed to be sitting in an HOA storage facility. A few hours later, several vehicles arrived at the storage area. Karen came outside expecting another argument with me. Instead, she saw law enforcement and military personnel. Her expression changed instantly. She started explaining that she was the HOA president, that the container violated community rules, that she had authority to have it removed, Then one investigator asked her a very simple question. Who gave you permission to enter private property and take this container? Karen went silent. She couldn't answer. Then they asked another question. Who gave you permission to open or relocate government-related equipment? Again, silence. The container was recovered that same afternoon. Nothing important had been destroyed. But the consequences for Karen were just beginning. The HOA board held an emergency meeting. Several homeowners showed up. And for the first time, Karen wasn't sitting at the front of the room controlling the conversation. She was sitting across from people demanding answers. The board discovered that she had never obtained proper authorization to remove my property. She had relied on her own interpretation of HOA rules. She had hired a towing company. She had entered private property. And she had moved a container without knowing what was inside. The board voted to suspend her authority while the matter was investigated. Within weeks, she resigned, and the HOA changed its property enforcement procedures. As for me, the shipping container went right back where it had been, on my property, exactly where it belonged. I added a stronger lock, installed another camera, and put up one simple sign. Private property, no trespassing. The funny part is that Karen spent weeks insisting she was protecting the neighborhood, but in the end, she created the biggest problem the neighborhood had ever seen, all because she couldn't accept one simple fact. An HOA rule doesn't give someone the right to take whatever they want, especially when they don't know what they're taking. And sometimes, the thing you think is just someone's old storage container might be connected to something much bigger than you ever imagined.